Donkey Kong Country and Crash Bandicoot are two series I've known since I was a baby, and through the years I've had ample chance to replay them, analyze them, hear what other people think, and evolve my opinion on these games. And there's one thing that I've concluded from the overall opinions I've heard about the original Crash Bandicoot trilogy. Some people may not see what I see in Crash Bandicoot 1. There's one comment that has lived rent-free in my mind for years, and it's when Cadicarus said that Crash Bandicoot 2 is what the first game should have been from the start.
But no matter how much people loved Crash 1, when Crash 2 came out and refined and improved basically everything, it was clear where the original should have been from the very beginning, and it looks kind of bad now. But that's just hindsight. When Crash 2 came out in '97, you could only say that with the new knowledge you gained as a hardcore Dorito gammon.
And look, I like Cadicarus. I think Caddy is a lovely bloke, but for fuck's sake I cannot disagree enough with that take. Crash 1 and 2 are going for absolutely different vibes from the start. It's fine if Naughty Dog ended up deciding that Crash 2 is what they should have been doing all along, but saying that Crash 2 is what Crash 1 should have been is like a painter finding out cubism is what they really like after they started out drawing anime style and then saying that anime is cubism done bad. Mate, I'm glad that you found your style, but the fact that you ended up preferring something else doesn't mean that anime was wrong by itself. This statement of Caddy's made me think, what do I see in Crash 1? Why does it stand tall about any other Crash Bandicoot game in my personal opinion? Why is it my favorite of the original trilogy? And no, it's not because it's the first one that I played. As a kid, I was smitten by 2 and 3. But as time passed, I realized I like 1 more, even though I would say that 3 is technically the best. And as I started piecing this question apart and put the pieces back into place, I noticed something. The music, the atmosphere, the world, the animations, the style... These are all things that I love about Donkey Kong Country, just that here in Crash they're far more exaggerated and wacky. So in other words, I came to see Crash Bandicoot 1 as Donkey Kong Country on crack. Alright, let's see why. I think we should start by seeing why Crash Bandicoot 1 is so unlike 2 and 3. I think that's how I started my thought process. By the way, I'm sticking to the PS1 trilogy for this video. If something I say happens to be relevant to anything beyond it, so be it. I myself am not taking that into consideration now. Let's piece out the most obvious elements. Crash Bandicoot 2 and 3 have level selectors, rooms with 5 levels each that the player can pick in any order they want, even if they may just stick to the numbered order, culminating with a boss fight before moving on to another room with 5 more levels. So on and so forth until the end of the game. While Crash 1 has an actual overworld, the 3 Wumpa Islands themselves, with a line connecting one level to another, making one continuous line from beginning to end. And to not get lost in details, we will be sticking to the basic playthrough for the most part on all games. No completion. Next element they differ on is the presence of crystals and the point of each level's existence. In Crash 2 and 3, the point for each level to exist is that there is a crystal in them, so Crash has to get it and get back to the base. While in Crash 1, the point of each level is to get to the end of it, because, as seen in the Overworld, it is part of the world that Crash is traversing. He actually needs to get to the other place. Why did the Bandicoot go through the levels? Because the evil scientist and his captive girlfriend are on the other side. Duh! Let's see now the level themes of the games. Let's start with 2. We have forest, snow, ruins, river surfing, sewers, and space stations as far as locations are concerned, because the game's plot involves Crash being sent all over the islands and Cortex's spaceship to get the crystals. In Crash 3 we have medieval fields, deep sea, Great Wall of China mid-construction, prehistoric time jungles, Sea of the Pirate Age, old Arabia cities, highways in the 50s, ancient Egypt pyramids, World War I plane fights, and future Metropolis. The plot this time is about Cortex traveling through time to get crystals and Crash stepping in, thus a lot more varied locations. Crash 1 has jungles, native fortresses, rivers, ruined cities and temples, old bridges, several factories and installations of such kind, outside and inside of castles, and laboratories. Like I said before, the plot of the game is literally that Crash is just trying to get to Cortex, and thus, all these locations are linked by being next to each other. Crash literally has to go through all of them in order to get to Cortex. Now one may make the case that Crash 2's locations are all logically connected in the same physical space, as they are all in the same islands as Crash 1's locations, unlike Crash 3's, which are all over the world and time. But the reason why I brought this up is because of the framing devices. Simply put, I lump 2 and 3 together here because the levels in both are physically disconnected and you just warp in and out of them from the headquarters. Crash 1 has something these two don't have, a cohesive and continuous world where the whole adventure takes place. Didn't you say that already? Yeah, but I said it through the context of level selections, the way you, the player, access the main content of the game. While now, I'm making the same point through the narrative framing of the games, the way these games convey the reason and how Crash goes through the whole journey. Okay, Crazer, but how do these points prove that Crash 1 is like Donkey Kong Country? Well, let's ask ourselves how Donkey Kong Country does it, shall we? Donkey Kong Country, and I'm talking about the original trilogy here too, has levels being part of a world, which are part of a bigger overworld. Each world has the stages as a part of the area, and in each game, the world is traversed through the stages because the goal is on the other side. Why did DK go into the cave? Because through the cave is how you eventually get to where they took his bananas. Duh! Donkey isn't going to the caves just because the caves happen to have something he needs. In other words, the caves aren't just the place where the thing I actually want is in. The caves are a part of the world, a part of the adventure, the mad trek to getting what his goal is. The fucking bananas. On the same token, in DKC 2 Diddy is trying to save Donkey, so the whole traversal of the worlds is a mean to be able to get to his bestie, infiltrate the bad guy's lair and all its convoluted setbacks for the power of bros. In DKC 3 is a bit of the same as 2, but Dixie is looking everywhere she can for clues to find both Donkey and Diddy, so it's more of a search through the world than a straight A to B trick. And in searching, you find tools that allow you to build your way up to the OG duo. This all may sound familiar now. It may seem like a very small thing, and honestly you may actually not lose anything in the overall experience, but I do think the framing of these stages, their implementation in the world and narrative can make a big difference. In essence, I think it adds a lot of depth to what could have been a simple level selector. And again, not saying that Crash 2 and 3's approach is bad. It's a different approach that I find less interesting, but it doesn't detract from the quality of the levels of these two games, which is of course high. But also now I gotta explain why I say Crash Bandicoot 1 is Donkey Kong Country on crack, and not something like Super Mario World or Rayman 2, or any other game that has integrated overworlds to the plot and goal of the game, or give an in-world explanation to why the overworld and any teleportation devices work the way they do. And that's where we get into the atmosphere and music. Donkey Kong Country, as a trilogy, again the SNES original, has an atmosphere that I'd call cartoony with a consistent feel of realistic awe. What I mean is that all of the game is clearly a cartoon. It's cartoony in all its logic and mechanics, but from the way the characters are illustrated, the animations, and especially the environments, capture an essence of realism that is palpable, even through their cartoony stylization. The textures, the shapes, the size, the sense of depth, the colors, even just the parallax helps give the feeling that this is a believable place. I think that is the keyword. If we take the games that I said aren't quite like Crash 1 or DKC, I can better explain what I get at when I say believable. Super Mario World is far simpler in its approach. It's cartoony in a more abstract sense, much more removed from reality. Its art style is far more vibrant and iconographic. Its world looks more like a childlike drawing than anything we'd see in reality. In the case of Rayman 2, the characters and world itself are very removed from our own world. Sure, we can see plants, fish, shapes and whatnot, but they do not work in a way we can expect from our world, and thus, even though Rayman 2's atmosphere and artistic direction are wonderful, it's definitely a fantasy world through and through. More of the fairy kind than any Earth with magic or Earth with cartoon logic type of fantasy. Now, do Crash 2 and 3 fall into a similar lack of believability? Well, not completely. I think the levels are pretty neat and many of them do evoke a very believable place, such as Turtle Woods, Hang 'em High, and some places like Hog Ride hit very close to home, we can still see 50 spikes. But the deal is, I think, how disconnected these areas are from one another. Granted, because the game's framing device isn't a believable cohesive world. So, with the current framing device, they are more of a collection of levels connected by the fact they're in the same game and have the same art direction. Otherwise, the Ill Deal and Ruination are practically unrelated. Now, one could be quick to ask, doesn't that also apply to, say, Slippery Climb and Jungle Rollers? Or Generator Room and Road to Nowhere? On the surface, of course, same as how a metropolis is completely disconnected from a small town, even if they're just an hour away from each other. It's all in the framing device. Because Tomb Raider and Dynamite have no connection beyond being in Crash 3 and all that entails. But Crash 1 actually has a straightforward logic as to why some areas are connected to one another. See, the Great Gate and Native Fortress are literally walls that surround Pabu Pabu, making this basically the core of the society of Wumpa Island's natives. Around these barriers, there's stages like jungle rollers, boulders, and rolling stones, some native traps to keep unwanted visitors away. Furthermore, the Lost City is basically the streets to Temple Ruins' temple. And remember that Road to Nowhere, funnily enough, actually leads to Sunset Vista once you get past Boulder Dash. So once again, between Sunset Vista and the Lost City, you got a whole urban settlement. And we all may know of urban places that have districts connected by bridges. The entire first half of the third Wumpa Island, that is between Heavy Machinery and Pinstripe Potteroo, is basically a big power plant that Cortex installed. And the second half, past the High Road, is all the parts of Cortex's castle, which take advantage of the resources made on the first half of the island. Now, just because I feel like some may still be doubting me, let me bring up Jaws of Darkness, a temple just like Temple Ruins. Remember how these are all the Wumpa Islands? Remember how these islands have their natives in Papu Papu's tribe? Remember how the Lost City and Sunset Vista are abandoned while having similar imagery to the works of those natives? Notice how Koala Kong is taking minerals to Cortex's main headquarters? I mean, look at how there's still natives presumably operating Boulder Dash and absolutely present in Whole Hog. Just from environmental clues we can deduce that Cortex drove off the natives of the islands to make it his headquarters and take its resources, including the wildlife that he used to make his likeys. And that is the cohesive world building that makes Upstream belong in the same game as Toxic Waste. The same cohesiveness that makes all the wacky settings of Donkey Kong Country work as a country. And finally we get to the music. And this is where we go back to just Crash and Donkey. While any game of the Donkey trilogy is fine for this type of comparison, I will stick to Donkey Kong Country 1 as the spotlight, but we have to once again reach out to what makes Crash 2 and 3 not like Donkey. Crash 2 and 3 had their differences in soundtrack, but the thing that I notice in both is that they overall have songs that just check the boxes of the locations they're in. Not all of them, some are absolutely awesome, but when I remember stuff like Ruination, Snow Go, Hang 8, Toad Village, Hang 'em High, and maybe some others, I feel like these songs don't really nail the landing. Like, feel free to like them. I don't necessarily dislike them, but so many songs feel like a very surface level evocation of the theme of the level, or a vibe they meant the level to have, or a song that just happens to have the instruments relevant to the theme or vibe. Again, if you like the songs, that's awesome. I myself think some are very lacking. Donkey Kong Country 1 does excel at the music department. In case the internet hasn't made that clear enough, its music has been celebrated to hell and back, and I myself agree. Virtually all songs in the game make the level what it is. Just off the top of my head, Jungle Hijinks is the classic. Aquatic Ambience is basically overplayed. But then we have Cave Dweller Concert. Forest Frenzy. Northern Hemispheres. Life in the Mines. Misty Menace. Voices of the Temple. Minecart Madness. Fear Factory. these songs surely fit the vibe of the stage. They do evoke wonderfully the location and action of the stage. But on top of that, the music reinforces and amplifies the mood of the stage in ways the stage itself doesn't. The music makes the stage as much as the stage made the song. Now let's see once more Crash Bandicoot 1. I won't be going over all the songs, as I do plan to do that in a future video, but here go a couple of examples where I hope I can show how the song and the stage feel like one and the same, elevated by each other's elements. I'm not sure if I'm making a good enough job at conveying what I mean here, but these songs have a borderline perfect balance of a catchy melody and the right ambience, even though some do absolutely lean more towards one or the other. Many songs use silence and pacing masterfully, as well as mixing and spacing. The stages of Crash 1 already had a comprehensible progression, the world can easily be seen through its stages, but with the music, this game comes to life. And that's why I think Crash Bandicoot 1 is practically a much more cartoony and wacky Donkey Kong Country. A platformer with a very well established world that is both fun to navigate and a location to admire. Again, I hope I did manage to convey my feelings appropriately. If anyone wants to pitch in and add anything to this discussion, or refute it if you have any thoughts I don't, please feel free. This kind of talk is as fun as the games themselves to me. I mentioned before that I plan on making a video about Crash Bandicoot 1's music, namely how I think the Insane trilogy missed the point with it and how the PS1 version is still superior. I've thought about doing a video on why I prefer Crash 1 over 2 and 3, but I think I did get all the gist of it out in this video, so yeah, that's all I got for now. Thanks again to my supporters on Ko-fi. Sy-step, bless you. Support me over there if you want me to do more stuff like this. Links in the description. And thanks again for watching, everyone. Hope to see you in the next one. Have a good one.